Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, into episode 14 of Deep in the Novo. I'm Ryan Novozinsky, joined here, as always, by my co-host, Sudeep Tumma. And today we're going to be talking about OSU's 24-21 victory over the Iowa State Cyclones this weekend. Sudeep, before we get into that, how are you doing?
Doing well, Ryan. How are you?
You know, man, that's actually really great to hear. You know, I've actually never been more happy to hear that from you, especially coming after this OSU win that you and I both got to witness the other day. It's really interesting, right? You saw OSU, obviously the number 6 team in the country, go against this Iowa State team who was ranked number 17th in the country, and it was a really sort of back and forth performance, right? You saw some punches traded, but then overall you see OSU prevail in the end and sort of come away with that victory, which came down sort of to that last play, sort of to that little weird onside kick that Iowa State tried to do, and it was very interesting. So let's talk about first one of the main reasons that this win came about was because of the play of Spencer Sanders, who got off to a little bit of a rocky start, but when it came down to it, as things progressed, Spencer Sanders really had to put in a great performance against the Iowa State Cyclones, and proved, I guess, further solidified. I mean, I don't know how much proving he needed to do that he's obviously the quarterback going forward for this OSU Cowboys team.
Yeah, it's almost silly that there is sort of not even competition, but just there's a discussion to be had, right? Mm-hmm. But that just speaks to how well and how poised and mature Shane Ellingworth's been. That being said, we talked about it week after week, right? No matter what, OSU has shown us that they're not starting Shane Ellingworth if Spencer Sanders is healthy for one reason, right? I mean, he's a freshman, right? You saw it because the past weeks, right, with Shane Ellingworth, sure, he was really promising, right? Decision-making, IQ, everything. But they really used, very little of the playbook, right? It was 1-2 read, go, right? You really minimize it. Conservative play, short passes, run game, pump the ball away and play defense, right? Mm-hmm. It was a very different approach for OSU. Now with Spencer Sanders, you saw a guy, your experienced guy, right? Your redshirt sophomore, your talented guy with the big arm, with the electric running ability, right? With the legs. And that's the main thing. First of all, plain and simple, Spencer Sanders is a more talented guy, right?
Yeah,
it's just
more experienced too.
Right, exactly. And then more than that, his dual threat ability, he gives you something that you just don't get with Shane Ellingworth, right? With those legs, obviously, I mean, plain and simple, a guy who can run versus a guy who can't run as well, right? I mean, Shane Ellingworth's a little bit mobile, but Spencer Sanders is obviously an electric runner, right? And he gives you that element of on the zone reads, right? On RPOs, RPOs, whether it's zone reads, read options, designed runs, this is a guy where you can just do different things. And just him handing the ball off to Chuba Hubbard, even when he's handing off, even if it's not a fake potential with him to tuck it, just the fact that he's there in the backfield, that takes another defender out, right? He has to look at Spencer Sanders. In coverage, when Spencer Sanders is dropping back in the pocket, the defender has to devote one more guy to Spencer, to keep his eyes on him, to make sure this guy doesn't break out of the pocket and roll out, right? That's what runners do. And overall, I like Spencer Sanders and what he did, right? You're right. He did start off a little shaky, not just the interceptions, but that first 50-50 ball through Tylen Wallace didn't look the best. Those guys have great chemistry in general. That one was a little bit off. But yeah, besides that, he got better definitely as the game went on, and very quickly he shut off those kind of mistakes, right? The first interception talked about, it wasn't his fault per se. I mean, it was, but it was a very minimal thing where it's not even like, oh, there was a wrong read or a wrong pass, right? He broke out, escaped when the pressure was on him, and if he threw it just a foot or 2 or 3 higher, wouldn't have been interception. Got tipped up, got caught, right? Second one, it wasn't even like, oh, that's the guy's completely covered. It was the cornerback dropped a little bit, the safety came, break off on the play.
Right.
And yeah, shouldn't have been thrown, but mistakes happen, right, for everyone. But overall, it looked like he was great. He gave him another element. You saw it on the touchdowns called back. It was very impressive, right? He was able to just break out and run. A lot of times he was able to create with his legs, right? That's the main thing. Not just as a runner, but when there was the botch snap, right, that fell behind him. So much poise for him to just run, catch the ball, escape out the pocket, and make a pass on the run. That's very difficult. To have the poise to just, instead of falling on it, to pick it up and know where your guys are, right? To keep that sort of, that calm, cool composure. That's one aspect. And then 2, the athleticism to go make that play, the ability to throw on the run. Those aren't easy things, right? And time again, he was just supposed to be in the pocket, but, the pressure comes to him. He has to escape out. His legs and his ability to throw on the run. Makes plays, right? Plays you don't see. And overall, it was great. I think even when he's in the pocket, that's what I really want to see this season, right? Obviously, when you're a young guy, you have so much ability in high school. you're just so willing to, okay, if I get a little bit of pressure, I'll escape out. Because in high school, I could outrun everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he did his first year, right? But he's really, to me, he looked a lot better in the pocket. Stepped up, even when there's light pressure, just his maturity, his poise, his mechanics when he was in the pocket, just slyly moving up a little bit. I like that. It looked like a guy who's a lot more mature. And from there, he just made good decisions. The ball looked good. He threw a lot of great passes to Tylan Wallace, other guys, precise, tight windows at times, and, accurate. So I think he did a great job.
Yeah, accurate as heck for sure. And I look at the arm strength too, and like you said, you touched on it definitely there. His intelligence too. When you're a mobile quarterback, when you're a dual threat quarterback like Spencer Sanders is, I mean, this is a guy who knows in these situations what decisions to make and can improv too. I mean, you look at the completion to, I believe it was Jelani Woods, or maybe that was a Landon Wolf one, where he completed it 14 yards down the field.
Right.
And that was right after a botched snap from Tyrese Williams, who had just came in 2 plays prior.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who does not have that great of blocking abilities or snapping abilities, as he proved in that play. But yeah, Spencer Sanders able to get it done, able to improv, able to do these kinds of things to make all these plays happen. And he's able to do it with great poise too. That's what I really like from Spencer Sanders. Obviously, you see some of these mistakes here and there, right? You saw the picks. But even those were like a little bit, sort of, I guess, you know what I'm saying, right?
Sure.
Yeah. This is, here's a guy who's able to get the job done. And man, OSU, this is their quarterback, right? This is the guy going forward. And this is going to be an exciting season because of that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the arm strength. I mean, let's not forget, it's such an easy narrative, right? With Shane Ellingworth coming in.
Mm-hmm.
The number one aspect of him, his arm strength.
Of course.
Right? But let's not forget, Spencer Sanders has a huge arm,
yes,
right? Because arm strength is not just the ability to pass down the field, which you can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's the velocity in which you throw it, right?
Yeah.
And when you have arm strength, you're able to make plays that not everyone can make, right? Down the field, of course, accurately, on the run, bad angles, and then to the outs, right? When guys are running out routes, curl routes, those are far passes that you need to drive the ball.
Definitely.
And he's able to do that. And yeah, you're right. I mean, overall, it was great. The botch snap for sure. That one was, I think, the most impressive. When you just combine the IQ, the poise, the composure, and then just the raw ability to make that play.
Definitely, yeah. And you got another guy back there, too. You got another guy in that backfield who also had a fantastic game. That's Chuba Hubbard, right? Another guy in that backfield who is also a fantastic runner, especially Chuba the other day, man. I mean, this guy, he further proves that ability. You said this in the tweet, of his bell cow ability as a running back. I mean, this is a guy who's so creative out there too. He makes the best out of some wacky situations even. I mean, that is one touchdown run that came after he was millimeters away from being down. And I mean, this is a guy who's able to put his hand on the ground, have great strength, have great balance, and break through and make a touchdown on that play. And Chuba Hubbard, man, I mean, this guy is unreal. We came into this thinking there is a conversation to be had about him versus Breece Hall in the Big 12. And while Breece Hall on the stat sheet outperformed Chuba Hubbard, I mean, you look at it from a consistency standpoint, Chuba Hubbard outperformed Breece Hall, I think, for sure.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. And I'll say this to go back to your earlier point. I'm the first person to say we're in a world right now, especially in the NFL, where even college, you can replace running backs like this,
yes,
right? Like easy. It's all about your offensive line, right? And that's what teams are doing, right? But even so, you saw with Chuba Hubbard the impact of having a bell cow,
yes,
right? Because by the fourth quarter, those guys were worn out.
Mm-hmm.
Your runs were coming more and more easily, right? You're able to pace, rhythm, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what type of runner Chuba Hubbard is, right? That's why you get him the ball, even when he's 5 carries, 5 yards, right? But yeah, I agree with you. I think you look at the stat sheet at the end of the day, Breece Hall had, 185 yards versus Chuba's 135. But when you look at the runs by Chuba Hubbard, consistent, right? 5 yards, 10 yards, 30 yards, maybe a yard, maybe a negative 1 yard. But there's a lot more consistency, constantly putting OSU in better positions, right? You're 1st and 10, you run the ball, you're 2nd and 5, you're maybe 3rd and 3 after a second run, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a much easier down and distance, right? Football's a game of strategy. And if you put your quarterback and you put your offense at 3rd and 3 versus 3rd and 7, it makes life a lot easier, right? Because if you're in 3 straight 3rd and 7s, you're probably you're probably punting the ball after all those. Versus if you're 3rd and 3 consistently, even if you're 3rd and 3 5 straight times, then you get a 70-yard touchdown. You're not going to be as productive overall unless you're going 3rd and 3 every time. Because then you can play action, throw it down the field. You can have Spencer Sanders run it out for an easy run. You can run the ball again. Your whole playbook is wide open versus when you're in those longer situations. Because not only does your playbook start slimming down, it's just harder. And yeah, I agree with you. I mean, yeah, I know we talked about it all week, right? I kept saying there's a legitimate conversation that Breece Hall is the best back in the Big 12. But I mean, like I said, I personally believe Chuba Hubbard is better because everything you saw, right? I mean, this guy's obviously got track speed, right? For a guy who's got something of a smaller stature, if you want to call it, he is very powerful, right? His legs are huge. He's got great balance. I know I tweeted that out. That's my favorite trait of him. The balance, right? His ability to just stay upright, stay on the field. David Montgomery, former ISU back, did that so well when he was here, right? And that's what I love about Chuba. He's got vision, patience. His ability to cut is so sweet. His vision is awesome. I think he's got elite traits in just about each of these categories. He's even becoming better as a pass catcher. And I agree. I think he completely outperformed Breece Hall. Not to say like, oh, we threw him out, right? It's very slim, the margin. But I think that because you look at just the consistency from snap to snap, right? And his ability to run. And you didn't even really think of LD Brown the entire game. Yeah. Chuba Hubbard kept putting you in better positions. He got you those runs, right? He got your offense flowing, kept it consistent, drive to drive. And this is the thing about football too. You're not, I mean, obviously you want to score every single possession, but a lot of times say you start your own 20, your own 30, you drive 40 yards or you drive 30 yards and you have to punt it. That's okay. You're still getting your offense driving, you're playing field positioning, letting your defense go. Even if you have an okay defense, that's how football is played, right? Versus 3 and out, right? There's a difference. And Chuba Hubbard did so well, helped OSU combined with Spencer Sanders. I think it just flowed so well.
Here's the way I look at it. When you look at games that Chuba Hubbard had last year, right? You look at that Tulsa game where he's had, what was that, an 82-yard run or something like that?
Right.
And you look at that, and in the beginning of the season when people were saying, oh, Chuba Hubbard, should we play LD Brown over him? Whatever. You look at people, and they want that. They want those sort of explosive runs. But, oh, my goodness, do you realize everyone listening, do you realize how valuable it is to get – football is a game of inches. To have somebody who can get, consistent 5-yard runs, 5-7-yard runs. That's insane.
Even 3 yards.
Yeah, exactly. For somebody who's able to do that is such a consistent running back. And I'm not saying Chuba Hubbard's going to get, 35 carries each game. Like, he shouldn't. I mean, that would wear him the hell out. But man, if somebody's going to get these types of runs, like and have that consistency, and also have that sort of 1-2 punch with him and LD Brown, who could take some of the load off him. Obviously, the pass attack can take the load off him. Spencer Sanders on the run and through the air can take the load off him. That's fantastic. You want that. That's you know what that is? That's a running back who can get you and be a huge part of a team that gets to the college football playoff.
Yeah, no doubt. And this is why coming into the year, I said, okay, this guy's the best running back in college football. Not because when you looked at last year, you saw a lot of 250 yards, right? 200 yards. It was because he was doing those things I'm talking about right now, consistently churning out yards. Then he would blow up for the 80-yard play, right? It wasn't just, he had 150 because he had a 90-yard run, and then he just kind of sucked the rest of the runs. It wasn't that. He was doing both, which is all you could ask for, right? Go 5 yards, then blows up for 60, right? That's just pure raw ability. But yeah, I mean, this game shows you the difference between LD Brown and Chuba Hubbard. And I'm not bashing LD Brown. I love LD Brown. I think he was the perfect complement. I think he just had a bad game.
Sure.
But against a really stout ISU run defense with a great defensive line, elite linebackers who shoot gaps so well, who are so rangy, great tacklers, right? Mike Rose and Jake Hummel, especially on the outsides. Ryan Vance also in the middle. Great linebackers, great safeties, just great run defense overall. This shows you, the ability to make people miss after, right? Yards after contact. Chuba Hubbard, the vision, the patience, and then making guys miss, running through guys, using your speed. This just shows what having a runner like Chuba Hubbard can do for you, right? Because your offensive line can't always do it. Your schemes can't always do it. Sometimes it's just downhill football.
Yeah, and I'll mention this about LD Brown just real quick. This might have been a super small microcosm thing, but I mean, there was one screen pass out there and I really like LD Brown on these screen passes. I think it's fantastic. I think they did that well against Tulsa, or not against Tulsa, against Kansas, and I think they did it well once against Iowa State. I forgot who they played. No, but I think he is good in that type of role, right? Where he's able to show his quickness in the open field, where he's able to,
and he's a home run hitter.
Exactly, yeah. And you're going to get that quite a bit from LD Brown. I guarantee it for the rest of the year. Like you said, maybe just a bad game out there.
Yeah, I think so. It's your classical change of pace back, right? Mm-hmm. A guy who can obviously, he's, like we talked about week after week. This is, again, like I said, not bashing LD Brown. I talked about how much I loved him, right? He's gotten bigger. He's running physical. He's a funny guy. Right? He's a very nice guy. His vision's better. His patience, his ability to run through the tackles just gotten so much better. And which is great as a change of pace back. Then he gives you that home run hitting ability. You really can't ask for a better number 2. But like I said, just had a bad game.
Can I ask you one last question about these running backs?
Of course.
So you don't think that Chuba Hubbard absolutely dominated in that game?
I mean,
absolutely dominated Breece Hall in that game?
I don't think so. I mean, he played as well as he could. I mean, like I said, the margin is very, very small. But I think he did play better because of that consistency and what it meant to winning, right? Because you're not just looking for, especially with running backs, you're not just looking at the end of the day to see who had more explosive plays, who had more big runs, right? It was the consistency and how it all fit in, right? And we'll get to Breece Hall when I think of him later on.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. We like to have a good time on here, right? We like to have a good time. Let's talk a little bit about, you talk about Breece Hall. Let's talk about Brock Purdy, okay? Let's talk about the other guy in that backfield, the other guy who will probably be in the NFL one day in that backfield, Brock Purdy. I like Brock Purdy a lot. I didn't see as much consistency from him in this game. Maybe he probably saw the same thing. Matt Campbell probably saw the same thing as I would have liked to have seen. But I think he still played solid. I think his pocket presence, I think his arm strength is really good. But I think honestly the way he was able to perform on the run, I think was really, really impressive. The way that, from what I saw, at least, just wasn't able to get it done. Obviously against OSU with the final result there. But man, Brock Purdy, he continues to prove to me that he's going to be a really good quarterback one day.
Early on, I think they only had 1 sack on him.
Yes,
but that to me proves his IQ.
Yes,
because he was under pressure. He should have been under pressure a lot of times, but he just got rid of the ball to short slants, to short crossing routes, just a short pass game, right?
That OSU defensive line, man.
Exactly. And it's Jim Knowles scheming up a lot of blitzes, or just sometimes not even blitzes, but just creative ways to attack Breece Hall, right? Whether it's get a linebacker in, drop Trace Ford out, right? Different things. And when he got the ball out quickly, which usually works, and you have Charlie Kolar running after the catch, and you have Xavier Hutchinson, a great yards after catch guy. Well, when you're being tackled by Rodarius Williams, Malcolm Rodriguez, these safeties, right? It's a very difficult proposition. And the way the run game, right? Like we just talked about Breece Hall and how when it's 1st and 10, you go 2nd and 9, then 3rd and 8. You're in tough situations. I think their average yards to go on 3rd down was 8.5, which is a lot, obviously, right? And that's a very difficult thing. And for me, it was that. Like, let's talk about 3rd down defense for just 1 second. They were what? They let them go 3 for 13.
Yes.
This is right now after this week the 3rd best 3rd down defense. Coming into the game, they were the 1st best, and 3rd best. The top 2 played 1 game. Like OSU's allowing
Big Ten.
I think so. 19% on 3rd down conversion, something like that. And it's not just they're doing well overall. They are doing well overall. But 3rd down is where Jim Knowles can get really creative, right? Dial up the blitzes, sometimes creative blitzes, where it's just 4-man fronts, but the stunts, right? Get these guys in different situations, confuse the quarterback. That's what they did so well, right? Against an ISU O-line that isn't the greatest, but overall, you're right. I like Purdy and how he played, but it just shows the IQ. But first of all, you're missing Tariq Milton. But more than that, like OSU, for me, it was the sideline to sideline speed.
Yes.
Right? You have such rangy linebackers and such rangy safeties and even cornerbacks. So ISU ran east and west so much, right? Breece Hall, east and west. Get the ball out, right? East and west. But the speed, and normally those guys who are such great playmakers, right? You have so many playmakers on that team. Usually they're just able to use their athletic ability to get out and get out into the open field and make and churn out yards. But against these athletic guys, like think about it, Trace Ford, 6'4", 240, who's able to run like a safety. This guy's got a lot of speed and a lot of athleticism and a lot of strength, and that's just what you're going up against. And overall, you get on 3rd down, it's very difficult. Then overall, I think Brock Purdy had under 100 yards for a majority of this game. He ended with 162, but a lot of that came in the fourth quarter, that last drive where they were just kind of playing prevent, let the short stuff go underneath, and you let Iowa State score with like 50 seconds left, right? I think they played it really well. I mean, Brock Purdy continues to impress me, but it's really difficult when you go against a defense like this. It's weird to say in the Big 12, you go against a defense like this. But, overall, I think they did a really good job containing. I think you're right. The legs were the main thing, right? When you watch previous games, you knew that this guy's an underrated runner, but they really used him to his strength. And I think it really ties directly hand in hand with Breece Hall. You saw it on read options. You saw it on different plays. And then this guy would just be able to run out, right? And I said early on, I'm like, they need to start putting QB spy on him. Otherwise, he's going to churn out yards. And you were able to do that because usually when you put a QB spy, you lose one guy in coverage, right? But with OSU's ability, Rodarius Williams, Jarek Bernard-Converse, to stick in man-to-man coverage, one-on-one, you don't need to devote as many guys in coverage, right? It's a luxury you have. And OSU was able to do that, right? You can put Colby Harville-Peel on Charlie Kolar, who's one of the best tight ends in college football. You're able to do that. And then from there, you're able to contain Brock Purdy on the run, right? Keep him from escaping the pocket for a lot of yards, right? You're able to do these things, and it was just a smart defensive play. It was as good as you can do because this guy is one of the best signal callers in college football.
He totally is. And like you said, Brock Purdy's intelligence stuck out to me as well. I mean, you look at just his pocket presence, just his ability to fire the football away when he's coming under pressure.
Yeah.
And like you said, especially under this OSU defense, who's been so freaking talented all year long. And this brings me to another question I have for you. Sincerely, okay? cannot believe I am an OSU student covering OSU that's being able to ask this question. Do you think, we look at some of these numbers, you see OSU's defense in the top ranks of the country. Do you think definitively this OSU defense could be up there as one of the top defenses in the country?
I do, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous that I'm saying that, right?
I know.
In the Big 12, in 2020, when spread offenses and all these things, air raids are at an all-time high.
Especially Iowa State, you kidding me?
Right, exactly.
That's a weird spread, too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's crazy to think. Now, I don't think they're going to be top 2 for the rest of the year.
I don't think so either.
But that's just a product of the offense you're going against. But regardless, I think very much could be because you just look at all three levels, right? There's not a single hole. Tanner McAllister is probably your worst player, and he's a pretty good player, right?
Very good, yeah.
You're deep. You're 2 deep at every single position. At D-line, you're 3 deep. Call it 4 deep if you want.
Sure.
Right? If the linebackers, think about it, you have Calvin Bundage and Devin Harper as your backups. Most teams we have those guys as their starters.
Yeah.
Right? You're able to rotate guys in. You have a defensive coordinator who I am absolutely in love with. He is his schemes.
Why don't you marry him?
His schemes, his concepts are absolutely brilliant. He's calling up all the right things. Casey Dunn's doing an excellent job, on the other side. And this team, what I love the most is Mike Gundy's for a guy who's an offensive guy, who probably, not to say need ego, but
sure.
These offensive guys want to see offense, right? He's really operating so well as a head coach in letting his team dictate game flow almost. In the sense, and what I mean by that is when the offense is kind of struggling or the situation, you have a defense, you're willing to punt it away after running it 3 straight times and going 3 and out because your defense is there. Play field position. Make the other team go 80, 90 yards, right? That helps your defense. Because if you're turning the ball over or giving them a short field, giving them 50 yards, giving them 30 yards to the end zone, that's a lot harder for a defense. Offense and defense go hand in hand. Mike Gundy's doing an excellent job of letting those two things work well by giving his defense more of a chance. And that's going to help in the stat sheet. That's going to help overall. And these guys, like I talked about, sideline speed. It's not just great concepts. It's not just great schemes. It's talented individuals from position to position, right? You got Trace Fordham D-line. You got Amen Abakamiga on the linebackers. You got Colby Harville-Peel and Trace Sterling, one of the best safety duos in the country.
Easily.
Right? Yeah, Rodarius Williams, one of the best corners in college football right now. Like, you got guys all over the field, and it like I said, right? You combine the schemes, you combine Mike Gundy's ability as a head coach, you combine everything, and I think this defense is just so primed, right? I could go on all day about each and every position that we have, but that's just how good they are.
And you look at, too, here's something that really has stuck out to me, and you just said it. Calvin Bundage, he's a guy that, like any team in the country, a lot of teams in the country would want to have him as a starter.
Sure.
These guys that are...
He was their best player, right? Their best defender.
Definitely. These guys that are 2-3 deep, look at a guy like Christian Holmes, okay?
Right.
That's a guy that OSU 2 years ago, would have loved to have been their starting cornerback, okay?
No doubt.
Any of these guys. You look at Brock Martin, okay? Tyron Irby, even sometimes to an extent, would be someone that OSU in years past would have loved to have had them as a starter. And now you're getting guys that are 2-3 talented, tiers talented than them. And these are the starters for OSU.
Yeah, exactly, right? Such talented guys. And this defensive line has even lost a few guys, right?
Yeah.
Colin Clay, Jaden Jernigan, I think, are out for the year, right? Or just so many guys missing. I mean, not so many guys missing, a few guys missing. And you're still so talented on that D-line, right? All these coaches, these assistant coaches, positional coaches are excellent, right? Tanner McAllister has really stepped up, right?
Yeah.
Thomas Harper is playing valuable snaps, right? It's all over. And another thing, they're versatile, and I think that's what really changes it. I talked about the sideline-to-sideline speed, right? The ability to, the ranginess, right? And that all works because of how versatile and athletic these guys are, right? You have Malcolm Rodriguez, who's a converted safety, right? Who's playing linebacker, but a guy who's so strong and can shoot gaps so well and is so athletic and just a surefire tackler, right? That you can, move into slot corners, move into running backs and even wide receivers if you want, right? Because he's a safety. He's got that sort of prowess. Emang Abagamiga has that sort of coverage ability, right? An athletic guy. And then in the back end, you have, this is what I talk about. This is what I think will illustrate it best. When you think about third and short, you're usually bringing in 6 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, right? Heavy set. Maybe you have 1 or 2 defensive backs to cover a wide receiver, a tight end if you want. But OSU's almost able to go with their base personnel.
Yes.
Because Trey Sterling, Tanner McAllister, and Colby Harville-Peel, especially Colby Harville-Peel and Trey Sterling, are so strong and so good at block shedding that you don't need to take them out, right? You are able to just attack.
You almost know that they're going to be the weapons on those plays, too.
And most of the time they end up coming with those tackles, right? Because they're just that strong and that good of tacklers. That's versatility that no other team really has, right? That's what's so special about these two guys. And that gives you such versatility because, say it's third and short, you bring in all those guys, they play action and pass it. You're usually screwed because you have big guys who can't cover. But now you got that, right? You got your defensive backs there. You got your base personnel. And it goes both ways, right? Maybe you're trying to instead of replacing those linebackers, right, Malcolm and Amen, and putting in defensive backs, those guys are so good in coverage.
Yeah.
And let's take it a step further. Trace Ford, a defensive lineman, is so versatile, right? A 6'4", 240 guy who is so athletic. You can just put him out in coverage, right? That's versatility you don't have. And even on the defensive line, we talked about that package, right? Tyler Lacey in the middle, Calvin Bundage on one side, Trace Ford on the other side. Tyler Lacey's the only true defensive lineman. I mean, Trace Ford is as well, but those 2 guys you can pull out. That's rushing 1 guy, essentially, and 10 guys who are capable in coverage. That's such versatility you don't have on both ways. And that's why I think this defense is so special.
I think this defense is outstanding. I mean, you look, just like you said, at every level of the field, they're able to be so rangy, play all over the place. And this is stuff, I don't want to get too excited here, but as you said, when you have some of these third down situations, usually, have all these guys out there, out front, out on the defensive line. But no, you're able to keep your normal base package, and that is fantastic. That's stuff you see, even like a really good Michigan team or something like that can do. But OSU is able to do it this year with ease. Yeah,
you just have the pieces
against really good offenses.
Right. That's the main thing we shouldn't forget. Right. Like I said, your numbers might slip a little bit because you're playing such offenses. But I think everything I just mentioned. Yeah. And then when you talk to these players week in and week out, when you talk to Jim Knowles, the mentality. They want to be the ones winning games, right? It's not, they don't want to let their offense be like, "Oh yeah, we're playing tough offenses." They want to be the ones closing out games, right? If there's a little bit, even against that West Virginia game where there were so many pass breakups, so many turnovers, so many yards kept, so little points allowed, they almost looked upset for what they gave up, right? The mentality is just amazing.
Yeah. For sure, yeah.
In the Big 12.
In the Big 12. Jim Knowles is going to be making a lot of money someday, and I've said that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And let's finish things out. Let's talk about what this defense was able to do against Breece Hall, somebody who is one of the best running backs in the Big 12. Let's not forget that, sure. But, man, he had a lot of big plays out there. Or actually, he had 2 big plays out there, and that sort of drove up a lot of his numbers. And to tell you the truth, I know that numbers-wise, he had, 180-something yards?
185.
That looks like a freaking great game.
Yeah.
But when you break it down, when you look at it, take the microscope under it, not even a microscope, you take, one of those things, what are they called? I forget. What are they called? Magnifying glass.
Yeah,
you take that out there, you can see that, two huge plays out there that was able to drive up the numbers a little bit. And not to say he's not talented. He is very talented. But this OSU defense was able to stop him a little bit, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I was thinking that all game, and I'm the first person to say I don't hate, but I mean, I'm not the person to say, oh, well, if you take away the big plays.
Of course, neither am I. Mm-hmm.
But in this situation, take away the big plays because it was just that sort of game, and the way the plays came were different. Because I'll say this, anytime a guy earns big plays, they earn big plays, right? It's not fair to anyone to say, oh, if you take away the big plays, because the guys earn those big plays. Teams earn those big plays, right? That's what they are. A lot of teams are big play offenses, right? Mm-hmm. Explosive offenses. You get that because you're able to go downfield, because you're able to churn off big runs, right? But when you look at that 185, you had that 70-yard run, that 66-yard run. We'll start with that 70-yard run, right? Just a little power run, right, near the goal line, right, where OC stopped them real quick, and you're thinking, okay, yeah, they're going to stop at 3 and out, punch it out, right? Mm-hmm. But it was very well executed because OSU had a lot of guys in the box. The gaps were all proper, but it was just great power running. The tight ends made great blocks, and the hole opened up and it went, right? That was one for sure. Mm-hmm. But you take away those two runs, and you're left with a guy who has, I think, 18 carries for 49 yards, if I did the math right.
Right.
And to most games, that's a success against Breece Hall,
Definitely.
Right? A guy of that caliber. And like we talked about previously, this is a guy who's very talented. Big fans, obviously, right? The power back, but he's got great speed. You see in the open field, he's great vision, burst, everything, right? He's patient. But when you looked at most of the game, we talked about Chuba Hubbard. Mm-hmm. Why is Chuba Hubbard better this game? Because he was able to consistently churn out runs, right? Yeah. Consistently keep the offense moving, right? Breece Hall didn't do that a lot, and that's more of a credit to how good OSU's defense is than Breece Hall, right?
Yeah.
But the big run was that left tackle, right? Off the left tackle, just a handoff, little sweep around the tackle, right? And he went 66 yards, wide open, basically untouched. The reason for me it was so painful to watch is just it was as simple as there was no contain on the left side, right? If you have just a defender playing contain, sealing the edge to force Breece Hall back into the tackles, run between the tackles, then you have guys waiting for him. You got 4, 5, 6, 7 defenders right there. They didn't seal the edge right there. What happens? Breece Hall just goes untouched, swings around, nobody's there. Right? There's one guy to beat. There's one guy to begin on that edge, and he's just being blocked out by whatever receiver, tight end was there. And if you just steal the edge, simple as just playing contain, right? That's staying disciplined. And if you just did that run is out, right? And for me, that was most of the offense, right? They had 14 points early. One of that was the Brock Purdy, which I'll get to in a second, and that one's also a lack of discipline. But that second touchdown, 14 points. If the game ended a minute earlier, OSU would have won 24-14.
Yeah.
You take away that 7 points because of a lack of discipline, right? And then the other touchdown, the Brock Purdy one, again, that was another one that came down to big plays, right? Spencer Sanders' interception. He threw a foot higher. Wouldn't have been. What did we just say? It's a game of inches.
Game of inches.
You give a short field. That's tough for any defense. Mm-hmm. What do I keep saying? OSU Mike Gundy is doing it so well by playing the field position. When you have a turnover like that, it's very difficult in a short field. But when you even look at that play, and I'm sure we're going to review it later in film room, but Trace Ford, he came down it was a read option, right? Breece Hall was going to the left if he handed it off. If he tucks and runs, he goes to the right. Trace Ford, who's the edge defender, has to wait and just pick it. Either go in and tackle Breece Hall or stop Brock Purdy. The read is simple. It's always stop and let Brock Purdy come to you, right? So that way you force him to hand it off. He would have forced it to hand it off right into the hands of Malcolm Rodriguez, right? Breece Hall would have been right in the hands. But instead, Trace Ford gets he gets a little anxious. The team obviously wants to stop Breece Hall. You go in, Brock Purdy runs in for 11-yard touchdown. That's a lack of discipline, right? It's the little things I'm sure Jim Knowles is hampering on. You take those things away, and Iowa State is really looking for an offense, period.
Yeah, totally. Because you talk about game of inches, and that doesn't even mean like this is a game of, he might get, 1 yard and it changes the game. No, this is a game of inches, meaning if there's one thing that's in place, that 70-yard touchdown or whatever yard touchdown.
Like I said, Spencer Sanders, if he throws it a foot higher, the interception never happens.
It's so much different, right? Mm-hmm. And these are just little, like you said, little things. And the mentality of Jim Knowles, at least from what I've gathered, is that these things will be corrected because, you're at OSU. Yeah. You're a team that is right now known for their defense, I'd say. Sure. Way more than their offense. And obviously, you got the stars in the offense, but, this defense is really killing it this year. So I think that with that and the fact that they relied on this defense so much, the defense in those first 3 games matured like no other defense I've seen in this out of this OSU team. Because when you think about it, like they were already talented, but they were forced into that role, into that sort of ball control role, like we talked about in the first couple of weeks. And now that they're able to, have that under their belt, they're able to kill it out there. And that's why this defense has been so successful. That's why they're able to stop Breece Hall. And like you said, we are never the type of people that will say, oh, just take the thing away. Because we heard that a million times, and it really frustrates the heck out of me.
Like I said, you earn those big plays.
Definitely, yeah. But you take those little mistakes away, which Jim Knowles will. You're able to say it a little bit about this OSU team, I think.
Exactly. It's like when we talk about you have the big plays, and it's like if you're constantly churning out a little bit, you can see a little bit of life, and then you get the big play. That's a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
But for Iowa State, there was not even a sign of life, right? It was such like I said, the reason I point them out now is because when you look at those big plays, it comes down to a little bit of that, right? Just seal the edge, step in instead of getting a little anxious, trying to just sack Brock Purdy, stop Breece Hall, those little things. Seal the edge, simple discipline for football, right? If you do that, it's a completely different game, right? Obviously OSU won, but those little things you want to change.
Definitely, yeah, and we will see some of these changes enacted within the next couple of weeks. Obviously, next week is Texas. That is a big one for the OSU Cowboys. We'll see what happens with those weird right wide receivers that Texas has, and let's see a little bit of Sam Ehlinger too. So that's all we have for the show today. Thank you for listening. As always, we will talk to you soon. We will talk to you next week.